From long COVID to Busso Ironman, episode number 13. I am your host, Beau Jones, and this is the Bottle.It podcast video log, Apple podcast. I'm not sure where you consume this information, education, down your ears, down your eyes, but that's us, Bottle.It TV. Now, episode 13, this is take 2 because I got halfway through recording episode 13 and realised that I was repeating episode 12. Now, this is a double content day. We have had internet issues, so we are launching episode 12 back to back with episode 13, so it wouldn't have been much chop if I did episode 12 and then started listening to episode 13 and I was repeating the same stories. Now, the only stories that I missed is the only things that I overlapped on was the positives coming out of a run with Nat from Trimob, and there was also a phone call with Clint, which I'm unsure if I mentioned that in episode 12, that really pumped my tyres back up and just reminded me why he's a good coach. Now, this week and has been a difficult weekend. We spoke about training Mojo and just trying to find some rhythm in just knocking over one session at a time and just building them back up, and it's working. It's one of those things. I was quick to share my Strava and find strength in that I'm improving, that my numbers are improving. It's also I'm taking great comfort in comparing my old numbers to my new numbers, as opposed to trying to compare my numbers with other athletes that have worn the floral. And I find that I can beat myself up pretty bad if I'm not able to hold the numbers that they're holding, which is something that you don't intentionally try to do, but you are the company that you keep. And when you're not able to, I think, hold up with the company you keep, it's really hard not to take that personally. So I've had to work this week on going back to the data and just assessing it from an individual point of view. And I found great comfort in that. I found great strength in, removing that comparison. And, everyone knows that comparison's the theft of joy. And it's been cool to, find some little wins in knowing that they're there. So I did have to swap and effectively plan my training plan around my long ride being moved to a Friday because we had Duke's party yesterday on Saturday, today's Sunday. And unfortunately, as much as you can plan your training program, you can't plan the weather. And it was a real one of those mornings where I woke up, the wind was 40 kilometers an hour. It was howling. I had to do, I think, a 4.5 hour ride, and the enthusiasm to get out there in the wind just wasn't there. And then a little bit of self-talk, dropped Duke at school, had the whole day to train, and drove down to Kurnell and had a filthy crosswind. So it wasn't even like you got the benefit of a tailwind at any one of the laps. It was a crosswind the whole time, so you couldn't take your hands off the handlebar. It was interesting, but I just took it that approach that, if we get a busso and it's blowing a gale, at least I know that I've done it in my training. I'm not going to be, it's not going to overwhelm me as much as it would have if I didn't do that. So, I just started knocking it over, and rather than looking at kilometers per hour or distance to go, I really focused on the heart rate and tried to keep the heart rate really, really low, like much lower than I had been, much lower than Noosa, much lower than my training usually allows it, and I just kind of kept it between the 120 and 130 mark. And after a couple of hours, I kind of was doing some math, and my average speed was 30 Ks, 31 Ks an hour, which is, given the wind and those factors, I was super stoked with that. That's, close to one of my PBs for a 100K ride. And I did it in a gnarly wind with a heart rate, 30 beats lower than I would have usually done a 100K ride. So I took great comfort in seeing that heart rate super low, which is just proof the last 8 weeks and the training volume and everything's working and pointing the right direction. So rather than, kind of grind the wind out and complain and make excuses, I literally smiled that whole ride just watching that heart rate stay super low. So there was, I took a great amount of encouragement out of that ride. I was able to run off the bike, which is something that I've kind of mismanaged. I've always focused on the ride and not so much the run off the bike. But talking to Clint, we've focused on nutrition, and it's not about the ride itself. It's about setting yourself up for the run afterwards. We're going to attack the run at Busselton in 2K chunks. So there's an aid station every 2 kilometers, and my process will be run comfortably until that 2K mark, walk every aid station, take that couple hundred meters to get fluids on, take some strain out of the knees and the ankles and some load out of the feet, let them recover, get that heart rate back down to 100, lower than 100, and start again for a 2K trot. And what I found was I was able to run 6-minute pace fairly comfortably and not stress the heart, not stress the body. And it was encouraging. There was no headaches, no sign of the fatigue that I had in the previous weekends. And it has me on an up. The mojo is back. At just that one day of training and effectively managing hydration and nutrition has really put me in a good mindset into this weekend. I skipped my swim set yesterday, which is frustrating. That was one of the things. Duke's party got big on us from a planning point of view, and with the plans changed, and we didn't have a babysitter for Duke, and I was at home with Duke and couldn't go do my swim, which is 100% fine. Those things happen. It is frustrating, but at the same time, it was Duke's birthday party, and Ali had a few tins, and I know you're listening and thinking, didn't have a drop. So I am back on the sober bandwagon. It's something that once you commit to it, I know I let the hair down in Noosa. Once you commit to it, you start seeing the benefits. And for love nor money would have I touched a beer yesterday. So it's there's definitely great strength in not only mentally saying no to alcohol, but also physically. Like, I know the improvements there are physical, but the mental focus and strength you get from not touching a drop is next level. Like I said, there will be an episode where that's focused. I don't know where I'm going to fit it in, but there will be an episode where I speak about how much dropping alcohol for a couple of months changed my life. It's so beneficial. So this morning I did a 2.8k swim, I think, in the wetsuit, kind of race simulation. Just got in, swum consistently, done a really good pace. It was good to get the wetsuit on. I always like to leave the wetsuit to the last couple of weeks of a prep. I always think the wetsuit's a nice bit of reward if you do all your training in swimmers, and once you jump in that wetsuit, you get the buoyancy and the extra speed. It's a really good feeling to look at your numbers and know that you've worked hard to get those numbers. And the wetsuit definitely does give you a little bit of a boost. So that was a great swim this morning. I got to do an hour and 45 run this afternoon, which it's stinking hot outside, so I might wait till a little bit later in the afternoon, but I'm keen to do that. Same thing, zone 2, keep it really comfortable. Another TT update. So I know we had the previous owner of my TT reach out and offer to lend me my old bike back, or his new bike, but my old bike back. And after sitting with that for 24, 48 hours and speaking to a few people about it, the seat post was fixed at a certain height when I sold it. That's why I had to sell it at a cheap price. And to travel with a seat post that won't go up and down, I don't think it's going to allow me to fit it into a bike bag. I also, an Ironman's a long ride, and I wanted to set the bike up. I would have had to change a few things, change a few parts, and I didn't want to have to change all the parts and change them back. So made the decision to reach out to another guy who has a bike in Adelaide and get it sent up. Cutting it really fine with delivery times, but it's a shiv. It's the same as my old model. Getting it sent up, it's mine, bought it outright, so I can get it into the bike shop hopefully Thursday, Friday next week, get it built how I want it built, get it built roughly to size, work with Clint on FaceTime and try to get that size, the fit dialed in, have a long ride Saturday, and just really, I know the legs have the power on the roadie, and I was quick on the Cervelo when I had that operating. So it gives me a week, I think, to dial it in and try to get comfortable on it as quick as possible, and hopefully start seeing some numbers over in Busso, and it works out. But I am really happy that I've got my own bike now, and I can sweat and destroy, ride it into the earth and not feel bad about it. So I'm looking forward to burying myself on a new secondhand bike. And it's thank you so much for following the journey of bike drama and updates. It's like I said, a little side quest, but it is something that I'm really stoked to have now, especially moving into 2024. And that's one of those cool things of like not being able to see the trees for the forest or the forest for the trees. It's as much as Busso is huge, and this whole episode's been about getting the Busso finish line, I'm already thinking about 2024. We have athletes already signing up for Port Macquarie Ironman, for Cairns Ironman, and that's really the core of what Bottle.It is. Like, we love the Ironman athletes. We know how much when someone says they do an Ironman, it kind of does create that, oh wow. So we are pumped, and I will be lining up at either of those events or Taupo. I'm keen to get back to Cairns 70.3. That was where the long COVID journey started. I'm keen to get back up there and knock a fair chunk off that time. That still kind of irritates me a little bit, that time, which the fire still burns. So I'll get back up to Cairns half. I don't know about Ironman Australia. That is obviously our home event and an event that I really enjoy. But we'll see how we go with that prep. Now, one of the things that has happened in the last couple of weeks, and you would have noticed if you listened to the early episodes, is that I've stopped giving updates on my weight. The last time I checked, I was 118, and when I started recording this, I was 100 and I think I was 124 when this started, or a couple of weeks before I started, I was 124. I know either way, 124 was my peak, and then once I started doing 2-a-days, it nosedived quick. It went down to 119, 118. It would have been 3 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks ago, and the batteries went flat in the scales, and I haven't been able to weigh myself. And I haven't rushed out to buy new batteries for the scales for a very good reason. Now, I know everyone, when I did the first episode about the weight and the scales and how much, that can play on your mind, but if you use it as a positive, not a negative, and everyone focused on the negative of, it's just numbers, but there was positive momentum coming from using that first couple of weeks as weight's coming, keep training, weight's coming, keep training. But I've stopped weighing myself, and the reason for it is because, I managed to lose 5 kilos on a ride if I don't hydrate correctly, and that's a lot. 5 kilos in a ride is a lot of weight to lose. So I know the numbers can vary a huge amount, especially with diet and hydration. And, it got to a point where I feel at the moment, and I know my clothes are fitting, the weight has fallen off, and the clothes are fitting better, the tri-suits fit better, Lycra is fitting better. So I know naturally that I'm losing weight. I know the scales are going down. I don't actually need the number to tell me anymore. And the reason why I don't need the number to tell me anymore is because I was speaking to, this is a weird name drop, and a weird flex, I guess. Michael Checker was down at the 440 one morning. I was talking to him about the issues of weight gain in regards to performance and running, and how much, trying to lose weight and being too big when you start, it plays on your mind. And he shared a story, yet another name drop, of Brian O'Driscoll when he was playing peak level rugby union, international level rugby union. I'm going to make a number up, that he would have been, when he was 88 kilos. This is made up. Probably might have been 90. I don't know how big he was. 88 kilos. And he saw the scales at 88 kilos. He'd have an absolute blinder of a game. Like, he was on. That was his magic number. And then the next week, if he stepped on the scales after a play up of a week and he was 89 kilos, he'd have a terrible game. An absolute terrible game. He'd drop the ball. He'd miss kicks. His head wasn't in it just from seeing that number 89. I'm definitely not Brian O'Driscoll, and I'm definitely not at an international level, but I feel at the moment, with the positive momentum I have going and the way I feel about my weight at the moment, I'm running light, I'm swimming light, I'm riding light, I'm feeling really good. Unless that number was to show me something below 110, I think everything else I'd find disappointing. Really disappointing. And I don't want to take that gamble on stepping on the scales and knowing before the race that, the number I have in my head isn't there. I'll weigh myself immediately after the race, so we know for context how much weight there was lost. And I know there's so many, muscle weighs more than fat, or body change, or whatever it is. I know there's so many reasons for so many things, but I will get your number to close out this podcast. But I don't want to know at the moment. I don't want to know. I feel good. I'm, like I said, in my head, I'm light. And that's, I think, a big part of the challenge is when you're running and you know what the number is in your head. I'm my biggest bully when I run, and I'm telling myself over and over and again, I'm 124, I'm 122, I'm 122. I shouldn't be running. I'm too big. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that noise in my head come the Ironman. So at the moment, I'm feeling light. I'm running light. I don't want to know the number. So no updates on the weight. But yeah, I have finally taken some of the advice in the comments and, some of the advice from the coaches, and I have ditched the scales. I won't go anywhere near them before the race because things are moving well, and I'm a big fan of Mojo and vibes and, the whole setup. So I'm staying positive. I'm racing positive, and it'll be good fun. So that's 13 minutes 30. I promised it was going to be a short one. I'm going to start to wrap it up. So in the next few weeks, we have the fractal hats landing Tuesday. So for anyone who's listening has ordered, your hats are going to be in the mail before we go to Busso, like a week before we go to Busso, which is ahead of schedule. The budgie smugglers are on their way out. They've been dispatched. So if you've ordered budgies, we've also got our first fundraiser, which is absolutely killing it at the moment. The friend of Bottle.It, Will Bigelow. He's run the ultra, run the marathon with him. You've heard a lot about him in this podcast. He's running for 48 hours to raise money for Bottle.It to keep us, basically move us into the full-time role at the moment. I run Bottle.It one day a week, and it's kind of it's going great. We run on the smell of a wet rag, but with some fundraising and some effective management of the 2024 calendar, we want to go full time. We want to be present. We want to be at more events. We want to be pushing the positive mental health narrative and the education tools behind it full time. So we're running that, which has been good fun. But yeah, so far I'm going to we've got one more weekend at home, and then we go to Busso. I'm keen. We're ready to go. Any questions, any comments, hit the comments on whatever platform you're on. Send me a DM. Absolutely love the support. Love the numbers that are coming in. Hopefully someone's listening to this thinking about their next one. So as always, we'll see you next week.